It's Tuesday, April 16th of 2024. This is a Plan Commission meeting, and it's we do have a verification of a quorum and open meeting laws, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Caravello. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bradford. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next item, anything to report from City Council since the last time?
I believe that just from the March 26th council meeting, R45 of 2024, and at the April 9th meeting, 06 of 2024 were approved.
Okay. And then as far as, did you have anything you want to report out, Chris, from the staff? Now that you're here again.
This is still the...
Plan Commission, yep, we're just getting to the staff report right now. Is there anything?
This is for the resolution with the amended date, correct?
Yep,
Okay, I think Tim is on.
okay. Anything else
Actually,
you want to
this-
report from goings-ons for the staff report?
Well, yeah, we're just moving forward and looking at our, getting the permits online, as you guys know. So we have a meeting next week, and we just had Nick start on Monday. That's the new zoning administrator. He's doing really well, getting just thrown into it. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions or concerns? Aside from... He started on Monday, so it feels like a long week. So I was like, yeah, yesterday was Monday, wasn't it? So, yes.
All right. And then the next item is, we're on item number 7, which is the right of discontinuance from Ridge Street. Is that Tim or Rick who wants to start this one? I'll try to blow this up a little.
I can handle this one.
Okay.
So Ridge Street, there was the approval at the council level to discontinue the portion of Ridge Street conditioned upon the property owner satisfying certain conditions. So one, they needed to get a DNR permit for the city to fill in wetland. They had to convey some property to the city for a pedestrian trail. And then they also had to convey a piece of land to the city that would be dedicated as public green space, public park, open space. The, I guess, petitioners have not satisfied those conditions as of yesterday. I spoke with their attorney. They're still ready to move forward with it. They've been in the process. They submitted their application to DNR for the wetland fill permit. They still want to move forward. I asked them when they think they would actually get this done, and they thought they could get it done in May, but just be careful. They suggested basically the week of the first meeting in June for the city council. So they still want to move forward. The previous resolution is null and void at this point, so we're bringing it back to see if the city is still interested in pursuing this project.
All right. Anything you want to add, Tim Semman? I know you did some work on this.
Yeah, just the updated resolution, and I think Chris may have distributed that either via email or in person. But there is a date, I believe it's June 14th, and you all can corroborate that here. But that's the date of the new resolution that would be under consideration. But other than that, I think Rick really covered everything. It's pretty straightforward. Looking for an extension.
Okay. Thank you. Anything you want to add, Chris?
No, it looks like it's under B, if you guys are looking for the date on that. So.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have a question about this, and it's actually something that I originally don't believe I asked, and I do not recall right now whether this was... Is this financially, because I know there is a financial impact of this to the city because we're going to be doing some improvements, or our plan is to do some improvements along there. But is essentially this sort of like trade that we're doing, is this a good deal for the city? I mean, is this an equitable, okay thing that we should be doing? And I'm just kind of, I don't know if I ever asked that originally, so I'm kind of like, I don't know how we would determine if it's really a reasonable.
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit during the CIP last year, and really there's a couple things. One would be potentially the relocation of the trailer sidewalk or whatever we end up doing from a public safety standpoint. I know that it's hard to put a dollar on the value of that, but we think that it would probably be safer and be used more. And then the additional land that we hope to get on the wetland, we think there's all sorts of trail possibilities there to connect that to the existing trail that hopefully will end up at Man Park one way and will connect the other way going toward Scotland and Stoughton Hospital. So we think that that land has some value. Did we have it appraised or anything like that? No. It's a big chunk of land. It's not very developable, but for our purposes, I think there's definitely value there. I don't know if that answers your question very clearly, but those are kind of the benefits. I'll put it as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that it does generally answer my question, because I guess there's a big, that large piece of undevelopable land. It's like, how would you even put an actual value on it? It's kind of a toss-up. I have also actually had a couple of people concerned with something going on down in the parcel of land that the city of Stoughton still owns, evidently, with some clearing of trees and such things. And I've had some folks wondering what's going on there, and after explaining kind of what we were hoping to do, they were wondering if there's any restrictions or anything that are on it as far as what can go there, and if we can put restrictions on what can be done there at this point.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to circle around to your first question really fast too.
Okay.
Previous job working in Rock County and dealing with shoreline, you would not believe how many people would purchase property like this and then try to fill it. And it's nice having the city own it so that we don't have to deal with that aspect of stuff with that outlot. There has been stop work orders from both the city and the DNR, just more of an FYI on that property with what's going on there right now. So that was put on as soon as we knew something was going on. Just more of an FYI. So, yep, and I believe that I know the DNR keeps us in the loop, and I've had a lot of stuff going on, so I apologize. This was happening, I think, was it last week that this happened? I think we had the stop order like last week and fines going out, and the DNR was contacted and doing the same measures. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
For the update. And so I guess looking at that further, is there, since they weren't supposed to be doing what they were doing down there, is there, at this point, can we say, hey, yeah, we want to put restrictions on what can be put there, because we don't know what they were up to, why they were doing that, and I'm kind of wondering if that's a thing that we can do at this point, since we're kind of back here again.
So where we're at right now, it's a completely discretionary decision. You could decide that you want to impose additional conditions that they would need to satisfy. 'Cause essentially what these are preconditions that they have to comply with. So if you're thinking of like deed restrictions and things like that, they would obviously have to agree, but then we don't have to like discontinue the roadway or convey the property. So it's something we could do. We would just want to be very specific about what we're seeking from them. And they may not agree, and if that's the case, then we're kind of where we're at, status quo.
I think the other part would be is, right now it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's zoned like industrial,
Yeah.
or something to that effect. So if they wanted to do, for example, residential, they would have to rezone it, and there would be a process to go through for that if they wanted to change the use of that land to what it's currently zoned as. I'd have to go back and double check to make sure, to see what the current zoning is. That's my recollection. We could certainly do that if that's a concern, but there would be, if we're gonna rezone it for any reason, there would be public hearings and notices and everything that would be involved with that if they were to change the current use.
Well, and I do know that there is, it's my understanding that there is wetland on the property. They're gonna have to do all of the stuff that goes along with that. I mean, they went in and cleared trees and they got in trouble for it, let's be honest, right? And even if it is just industrial, with the way that our current ordinance reads, most stuff is gonna have to come back to you guys anyway. I mean, even if we change the ordinance, depending on what they put in there, is gonna have to go through approval process, and there's gonna be a lot more steps involved in this property because of the fact that there's wetland on it and there's other factors. And so I think that, while I agree that I understand where you're coming from with adding restrictions, I think you guys are gonna have another crack at this, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yep.
So, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of other things going on there. It could be other things. I mean, the property's old. It'd be interesting to see what's going on there in general. So,
Yeah, that's a good point
Yes.
as well. And so, since we've been listening to what our attorneys have been telling us for years, I'm wondering, as far as future processes without actually putting restrictions on, is that something that can we possibly get Act 67? With this situation where we end up in a thing where it's like, we've got to prove something, or is that just, am I just really getting out there?
I don't think it would apply here because Act 67 would be the well, it could be if they're asking for a conditional use on the industrial, if it's a conditional use that's in an industrial district. So if they're looking like in an actual rezone, then you would have an extreme amount of discretion to approve or deny that. But if they were to apply for a conditional use permit for something that's listed as a conditional use in an industrial zone, then we would have to worry about, or consider, I should say, the Act 67 requirements and how we're evaluating a conditional use permit. They would still have to go through a site plan approval process, and like the conditional use, you can attach conditions on that are reasonable and related to the purpose of the ordinance to try to address any sort of negative externalities. But you're right, if they are applying for a conditional use permit, that is a consideration.
Okay. And back to our friend, the conditional use permit.
Anything else?
No.
All right, and I saw Alderperson Mayeski had his hand up earlier.
I did. I apologize.
Hit your button there.
I apologize. I'm coming here to this a little late in the game. I've been kind of sidelined for a while, and I'm looking at this map, and it's not. These maps are really pretty, and they're not telling me anything. What lands are we giving up, and what lands are they giving us?
Go ahead.
yeah, so essentially the area, so you've got the street that curves around, right?
Right.
The existing street. Everything, if you're looking straight at the map, everything on the right of that's essentially wetland is considered, it's being labeled as an Outlot 1. That is going to the city. Outlot 1 is going to the city. I'm not really sure when this was platted, but you can see all the bazillion lines across it. That was probably originally platted, I don't know. I've seen them as early as the 30s like that, but I would guess that it's been longer than that. Those will remove all those existing lot lines, and then it will be Lot 1 to the left. And that's the area that is, could potentially be developed. So that's the wetland, but here,
To the southeast of Cooper's Causeway would be what they're looking at developing.
so that if you're looking at the map, it's this chunk that right here,
Right.
Yeah, this is lot 1. This right here is outlot 1.
And
So-
the city would be discontinuing Ridge Street, which runs through the middle of
Yeah.
I
that
understand.
property.
Yeah, that one, yeah. Okay, so here's my question. Why on God's green earth? This would be like a developer having a large piece of land where he's required to give us X amount of acres for parkland. And he's gonna give us a wetland to do it. We wouldn't take that. Because, number one,
Yeah.
it doesn't meet the utility. Number two, why would we want to secure a piece of property that is not developable?
So that's a great point, right? And
And I'm not done.
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
So that's my first one.
So
In-
I can
in
answer
federal-
that quick.
No, and then in federal, when you're dealing with federal swap of lands, the first question they will ask, especially when it comes to recreational use, which basically this would become a part of, this would be zoned as eventually, because there's nothing else you could really do with it, or
Yeah.
conservation, is land of equal value and utility. What is the equal utility here?
Okay, so I am coming into this, again, last minute. I don't know that this is necessarily a land swap, or I know that we are going to be using it for Parks and Rec. But,
We wouldn't be using it for anything, it would be conservation, because you
Right.
cannot build on this.
right, you're right. I personally, like, after being in this field, could tell you horror stories about these being labeled as outlots and owned by somebody, and they turn around and get sold, and then we're dealing with the aftermath here. And so if the developer is willing to give us this, and I don't know that necessarily it's a land swap, I think it's in the best interest of the city to take it. Because the aftermath, like the future development stuff, can be a nightmare. I'm telling you this right now, as somebody that's dealt with this, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we don't know what this person is going to be requesting in the future. That is a zoning change. We need to look at the future land use map. There's a whole slew of stuff that goes into that, right? With that said, if the developer comes back and they're like, I want to do multifamily, then we need to address the park fees during that process. And I wasn't here during this, when this came to fruition, and so I might be speaking out of turn, but after somebody that has had to deal with like these outlots accidentally getting sold, it is a nightmare. I mean, and I'm not like, I know we're a city, I know we shouldn't be having to deal with that, but like, I'm giving you my unsolicited advice, right? And I understand what you're saying, because like, yeah, why would we take land that we can't put a park on necessarily? But, you know, there's other benefits to having wetlands in our area too, that does really help with flooding in the event that we have an event. There's other things that go into it. But with that said, just when I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen more than once when these get sold, and it's awful. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I know that we're using it for parkland, but I don't know that we've negotiated, this is just for the CSM at this part, and then getting rid of that, essentially a street that was probably platted in what, like 1930, maybe even older, that currently has a building partway on it. They are getting that. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't know, do you want to step in, Rick, or did I say anything out of turn on that?
From a legal perspective, I don't think anything is wrong there, right? I mean, it's ultimately a policy question for the city to decide if it wants to take on this piece of land in exchange for discontinuing Ridge Street. I mean, if it thinks that's a fair deal, if it's in the public interest, then it can move the resolution forward. But I mean, ultimately, if you decided conditions have changed and it's not worth the hassle anymore, that's within the city's prerogative.
And so basically, what we're giving up is, on the map I put on the screen, is the purple line is the public right-of-way, and then we would gain this big chunk of land in the outlined, And potentially, we could run the orange line as a future trail to connect to some existing stuff. So that's where, before when I said the benefit would be, is to take the existing trail that's there and extend it and connect it to other existing trails and future trails in that area.
And that's a great thought, except for the fact that the cost of putting a trail across the wetland. I mean, we had issues this last year by a condo association where they wouldn't let us use their property, and we were gonna be cutting down really old trees because we couldn't afford to put a small trail across a small bit of wetland.
Right.
So what's the realistic?
Well, I think that's something that we'd have to budget for, or at least the engineering, and figure out what that would be. And I think it might be in the 5-year CIP, if I remember right. We might be calling, is that the South Loop? I'd have to double check that. So I think we're planning on, at least figuring out what that cost would be. We don't have that cost today, but even if we never run the trail, we would still have that piece of land. Maybe it'd be worthless to it. Maybe there would be something that we could do with it later. But that's kind of an unknown right now. Did you have something, Commissioner Bradford?
agree.
Yeah, I do. I understand what you said about the infill and stuff, because I know places that's happened as a realtor. But I also get Tom's point that, are we telling them that this is in lieu of any park fees or whatever that they
No.
would have to pay?
No.
Okay, so they're
No.
not under, I know that's our contention, but
no.
is it clear to them that this is?
At this point, we don't even know if there would be any park fees because we don't know what they're
even
gonna
know what they're
do.
Yeah.
gonna do.
We would learn that through a rezoning
But it-
process if they were to do
Yeah,
that.
this would be totally separate.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't get credit for any of the land they donate.
Okay, because that would be my concern, is if they're giving us totally worthless, and when I say that, I'm saying that from a professional perspective.
Right.
Totally worthless land, not in terms of environment
No.
or anything else, monetary
Yeah.
worthless. And then, I mean, I like what you're thinking, Mr. Mayor. I think that'd be a lovely addition if we could pull it off, but again, it's dollars, and so if we're
Yeah.
giving them a swap for nothing, I mean, that would be,
Right.
yeah.
And the other
Okay.
part of it is down where the road is for Cooper's Causeway, we would be getting additional land where we could put an off-road trail or a sidewalk running parallel with the road versus cutting it, through basically their parking lot and through the woods. So that's the other part of it, is we're gonna, get land down there as well. But, it's really up to you guys to decide if you want to continue the date on this. It's up for action tonight. It's already been here. It's already been approved once at the council. So really, the point of this tonight was to see whether or not you wanted to basically extend the date. If the recommendation and ultimately the council says no, then I would imagine we'd have to start all over again, but we would still at least have the background work to do that. But it's been several months just to get to this point. It sounds like it'll be several more months before we would get to an end point.
Mayor, can I jump in here? So one thing to clarify, that June date will allow for the review and approval of a CSM. So the CSM is not being acted upon tonight. It's just that extension of the resolution. So part of the means by which the conditions of approval will be satisfied will be through a CSM. And that would provide another opportunity to have the discussion about the land area exchange. So I think the resolution will allow the time to further vet the discussion that is being had this evening. But just to be clear, a CSM is needed in addition to what's being acted upon this evening.
And can I add one more thing regarding the potential, blue sky or hopes of a trail or something like that? If that were to happen and that hopefully planned piece of trail would happen, that would be part of the Lower Yahara River Trail, which I think would qualify for all sorts of grants from who knows what sources, county, state, federal, perhaps, because that would actually be a connector to the the regional trail that connects up to Madison. So all things go well. So,
All right, any other questions or comments? I think those are all good comments. I think that regardless, we'll probably be having more deeper discussions. If there's any additional information that you need, Tom, we can get it your way. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion at this point.
I'll move to extend this, I don't know, what are we calling this?
Well, you can just approve the resolution.
I will move to approve this resolution.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Majewski. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Okay, we have one other item. It's a public hearing and possible action on a request to amend the zoning, classification, and subdivision plat, basically on Shelley Drive. So we asked to have this put on for tonight because we were trying to keep the project going. We couldn't make the last meeting because of the notice that was required, a 2-week public notice for a public hearing. So that's why it's on here tonight. Anything you want to add, Rick?
No, basically the materials, this is sort of another discontinuance one where the Chalet Court was conditionally discontinued, and the, I guess, proposal would be to create these 2 lots, and then the other lots that are remaining on the previous subdivision plat would be combined into one outlot, which is going to be dedicated to the city for public parkland. And the old Chalet Court, there is an easement area, public access easement, so the public can access from Chalet Drive. I think I got those, the drive and the court correct.
And anything you want to add, Chris?
No, you can see it was platted in 1973. We went through a CSM process. The reason it's a plat is because it's just moving into the realm of being a subdivision per 5 lots created over the course of 5 years or more. But the back, essentially that entire back half is getting absorbed into that adjacent land as it sits right now. My planner's recommendations I have on here, so it just needs to meet the minimum requirements of the zoning district. We're also looking for the plat and a rezone to match the adjacent lot too. And then due to the minimum street frontage being 50 feet, the proposed duplexes cannot be split for a 0 lot line. So, and then I broke that down. We have, they just need to get the information, and since I put this out, and then since then the developer's gotten me the information from DNR showing that they can meet those setbacks, I want that to reflect on the CSM to show that they're buildable. Are you guys okay if I just go down really fast and don't read them, just kind of paraphrase? So then, and then we need the normal language on there that's in plat. So we need utility easements, stormwater easements, all of that kind of fun stuff. Structures and trees can't be put there. And then number 5 is review and approval from engineering, building inspector, fire inspector, any other city departments, and then anything else that you guys identify or city staff. So.
Any questions or comments before we go into public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close our regular meeting. We'll reopen for public hearing. I had one person signed up for sure. That was Denise Wilson. You would have 3 minutes to speak on this issue. Are you available to speak?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can,
Yes.
loud and clear. Great.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask a question to make sure I understood what this information was about. So my first question is, there's already the one duplex. And my understanding when I looked through the packet information was that Mr. Nelson wants to add 2 more duplexes, so 4 houses. Is that correct?
I think the public hearing is really for you to provide us feedback. It's not really a
Okay.
Q&A session, but during the
Okay.
deliberation, that question may come up.
All right, fair enough. I wanted to make some comments about what's currently happening. If the wetlands have already been impacted, the woodland part that's already protected as a wetlands has already been impacted by the building that has already occurred. The population of wildlife has severely diminished. Part of that might be some foxes people are seeing here and there. But the bottom line is that there are no more rabbits anymore. There's barely been any deer. There's other wildlife that's just vanished. There's some birds and squirrels. That's all that's left. So the environment has already been negatively impacted by this build. If you drive, I don't know if any of the commissioners have actually driven by Chalet, the areas, the two areas that are proposed for additional duplexes are now completely covered with large mounds of soil and dirt. They've already been, I wouldn't say destroyed, but they have been severely impacted by the building process without permission to do so. And when you look at the lot that's there, the remaining amount of meadow, if I understand the plat correctly, this will put a duplex right up against the Nature's Garden daycare, right up against their fencing and their property. So with very little yard, with very little space, and I keep asking the question, I asked it in 2016 and I'll ask it again. Why do we have to cover every single piece of green space with a house or an apartment? I understand there's a housing issue in Stoughton. I understand that we need single-family and multifamily houses. I understand we need more young families that can afford them. However, this is again an attempt to put too much into a space that doesn't need it. There are better building areas within Stoughton. There's other options on the east side, but instead we're destroying one of the functions of a wetland, which is to keep us drained. Right now, the heavy rains we've had in the last couple months, the only reason Vernon Street hasn't had a problem with the heavy rains is because of the wetlands. And I'm just concerned that this is going to create a larger problem down the road. Checking on my other notes here because I know I'm coming up on time. So the bottom line is, why not just seed the rest of it as park and save the wetlands? I'm concerned because it's already damaged the wetlands. I'm concerned because of the storm drainage. Yes, you can dig as much as you want, but there was a natural process here that's been working for decades, and it's already being impacted. So I hope the commissioners look very carefully at allowing additional building on what could be a very nice green space on the east side that is already being damaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak at the public hearing? Sure, come on up to the microphone and push the button. You have 3 minutes. Push the button so the red light comes on. Perfect.
Very good. I'm Todd Nelson, the owner of the property. Any material that's been delivered on site exceeds the 75-foot setback from the wetlands, so it doesn't really impact. I mean, it's not on wetland. Okay, I think part of your package shows where with the wetland delineation report, where within the 75 feet. Also, we're only filling in. We only have a permit to fill in the open culvert between the two lots of about 80 feet or so. That's all. It's less than 0.005% of the total site. And what our potential agreement is that we will put in a concrete culvert to the wetlands, and then pave a 15-foot wide easement that the city then can have access to the about 1.24 acres that I'm going to then give to the city. The existing duplex didn't impact any, I mean, there was no special permitting, there was no special setbacks that we had to meet. I mean, it was just, it met the rules of new duplex construction in Stoughton. There was no, other than building permit, anybody could have really done it. In other words, there was no shenanigans there. And as far as the stormwater management or the stormwater, I mean, it wasn't a natural process. That site takes on about a couple acres of the motel up the street, and it brings it down to that inlet, and then drains it, give or take, about in the middle of that lot. And you know, I mow that lot 3-4 times a summer. And over the years, it's been nothing but a junk pile of beer bottles, tires, people throwing lawnmowers. You know, it's just kind of been, I'm always picking something up back there. So it hasn't really been it's far from a sanctuary. The duplexes, the 2 other duplexes that I'll build will be of the same fit and finish, but of a different design than the one that's built, which I think is a very nice, I mean, it's a very nice new construction duplex. And there's just not other options in Stoughton. If you want to come and build in Stoughton, you may not have any options right now, especially if you want to get into a duplex or even multifamily. It's tight, it's real tight. So as far as go somewhere else and build, well, you know, shoot, I own the property, and there really hasn't been a lot going on that part of town. I think I did a nice job with that first duplex with a splash of brick, ranch style. The building next to it will be a 2-story, with a splash of brick, same kind of fit and finish, but a different color. And then the property next to that, towards the daycare, will be of a different style, probably a split level, all 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Everything will have a large 2-car garage. So I think in the end, it will add a new kind of shine to that part of town and that street. As far as the daycare, you know, I speak to them every once in a while, and I've allowed them to push into the property, to mow, to have some more elbow room. I get that. I thought that was just being a good guy. But I've always put them on notice that someday, you know, that I'm going to want to build here. And I was always a little nervous about having them encroach in, but again, I wanted to make things work for them for as long as they possibly could. So.
All right, thank you.
Fair enough, thank you.
All right. Anybody else wish to speak at the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, reopen for our business. Any questions or comments from commissioners? And I would just make a couple quick comments. I mean, you can see the challenge of doing these infills. Oftentimes we talk about not wanting to sprawl. Here's an opportunity to do an infill project. Obviously, they're very challenging to make them work. It's a little disruptive to the neighbors because they've been used to having peace and quiet. This particular area where Chris mentioned was platted years ago was actually slated for much more density than is being proposed right now. We're going to be 6 units and done. Before, I think it was, I want to guess, 8 lots maybe, and I think there were duplex lots, so the density would have been more than double. So I think that this is a good gesture and a good compromise. That's just my personal feeling about it. I don't know if others have any comments they might want to make, but that's kind of where I'm at. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Motion. Robinson, and a second by Bradford.
Just be clear, it's to approve the replat and the rezone, the motion.
Okay. Is that consistent with your intent, Tom?
I'm sorry?
It's to approve the replat and the rezone. That's your motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any discussion, Commissioner Farrell?
The resolution I'm looking at just says, Planning Commission recommend approving the plat. Does it mention rezone? Does that make a difference? Or do we need to change that resolution or in paperwork?
Yeah, it should reflect a rezone.
Okay, maybe I'm looking at the wrong place. I'm looking at the resolution, paragraph C. It's, what page is that? Page 35 of the packet.
$35.
Am I looking at the wrong packet?
Otherwise, that can be added in there as a recommendation to approve a rezoning ordinance.
Do we need to amend it?
Yeah, it should be the plat and rezone. I'm gonna apologize. I know that we had a lot of stuff just
That's all, I didn't know.
randomly
Alright.
go wrong.
Okay, so
Tom
this,
just changed his motion.
you want to make an amendment to that to include the rezone?
Yeah. that's
All right.
that.
So there's a motion by Bradford to amend it to reflect the rezone. Is there a second?
I'll second the amendment.
All right, second by Schumacher. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. So then we go back to the motion as amended. So now the motion would be for the plat and the rezone. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. There'll probably be multiple future agenda items coming here, including some items related to Ridge Street and some site stuff for these others. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by Schumacher, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. We're adjourned.